Hey everybody, in today's video I'm going to go over one of the more annoying steps in Power Query, and that's the change type step that you might notice sometimes gets automatically created when you're loading data into Power Query. So I'm going to go over why you might want to get rid of that step and how to do it. So I've got this data set that I'm going to load into Power Query, and so to do that I'm going to the Data tab and select this button to select from table or range will automatically detect the data that I want to load into Power Query. Click on that, leave the default, say my table as headers, and hit OK. And now it's going to open up a Power Query window, and I'm going to load that, put that on the screen, and as you can see it's got that change type step right on there. So even though I didn't really do anything, it's automatically populated that in there. Now the reason I say that this may be a problem or may cause issues for you is with Power Query, these formulas are all hard-coded in there. So if at a later date, let's say we save this query, make some changes, whatever the case may be, but then at a later date, some of these headers change, like let's say store is not called store anymore, state is called something else. When Power Query loads this data into here and does a refresh, it runs through all these steps. So if you've renamed one of these fields, they're hard-coded in here, the original values. So if I change store to location, let's say, or restaurant, or whatever the case may be, it's going to give me an error, say, hey, it can't find store, because this formula here is effectively hard-coded in here. And Power Query is doing this automatically when I'm loading this data into here from my spreadsheet. So that's why it can be a bad thing, because it's not so much a problem that it's converting the data types based on what it's detecting them to be, but the danger is that hard coding of these fields means that if you ever change them, you can easily run into an error, because if it doesn't find those exact names again, it's going to error out on you, and you're going to wonder why you're getting an error in Power Query. It could be something simple like adding an extra space, right? It needs that exact match. And if you do need to change the types in Power Query, you can always do that yourself. You don't necessarily need Power Query to do that for you. So in this example, I'm going to just X this out, get rid of the step. But the thing is, you also don't want to be doing this every single time when you're loading data. So what you can do is on the File tab, there's an option for Options and Settings. And then if we select Query Options, then now you'll see we've got a bunch of options we can select from. There is one for data load. And so here we can see type detection. And this is the key one we want to look at. Right now it's set to detect column types and headers for unstructured sources according to each file settings. If I select never detect column types and hit OK, that will get rid of this issue for me. So I'm going to X out of here. Say I don't want to keep my changes to this table. Okay, and so you can see it's automatically converted it into a table for me. So now let's convert this back to a range and just go the same process, go from scratch to what I was at before. So it's back to how it was before. It's not a table. I'm going to go to the Data tab, select from table or range again. It's going to automatically detect. So same steps as before. I'm going to hit OK. It's going to open up Power Query. Now, as you can see, we've opened it up. We've got the source. It's done. So there's no change type step anymore just because I've changed that setting. So with just a simple change there in the settings for Power Query, you can get rid of that step, and you still can change the types, but this way you're avoiding Power Query automatically doing that for you, especially if you don't want to do that, because as I showed you, it could be a bit of a hassle, because any steps that you make in Power Query, these formulas, they are saved and effectively hard-coded. So that's the danger in doing that, especially if you make any changes later on. So a quick recap to where that is. If you go under the File tab, Options and Settings, Query Options, then go down to Data Load, and again, under Type Detection, make sure you select the option to never detect column types and headers. So if you do that, you'll get rid of that change type step, especially if, like I said, if you're finding it to be a bit of a nuisance and not really helpful for you. I'd say get rid of it. Um, and then that way you can avoid Power Query automatically adding that step each time you load data from your spreadsheet.